Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion. Today I'm excited because we're going to have somebody on the show and we're going to get a little bit deeper into perspectives and practical application, maybe like you haven't done before. And I think that's going to make a significantly bigger difference in your outcomes. And then we'll talk about that as well. Wayne Washington was born and raised in Philadelphia to a mother and father who met in the Philly area and were married in 1945. Wayne has an older sister who lives in the Boston area. Wayne always has had a love for math, which became evident with his winning the Lawnside Public School Math Award when he graduated from the 8th grade in Lawnside, New Jersey. Wayne developed a desire to learn more about computers in the 1960s. That desire became the major reason Wayne chose to enroll in the Ohio Northern University in Ada, Ohio, and pursue a degree in electrical engineering. Wayne's college years were highly instrumental in laying the foundation for the man Wayne is today. In addition to receiving his Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering on time, Wayne developed his authentic and relatable interpersonal skills as a member of the Delta Sigma Phi Society fraternity or social fraternity. Wayne began his work career at Joseph E. Seagram's and Sons Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana as a maintenance utility shift supervisor. Wayne then went to work for Emerson Electric Company in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then Merrill National Laboratories as a project engineer. Wayne then moved on as a project engineer at Ford Motor Company's engine division in Detroit, Michigan, before accepting his last project engineering position at the Meade Johnson division of Bristol Myers Squibb in Evansville, Indiana. Throughout his career, Wayne has led transformation projects that required systems and process changes, and most importantly, people engagement. Wayne also expanded his team building skills to include the local utility company, the Small Business Administration, and various national and local vendors to win the United States Department of Commerce National Energy Award for the best industrial energy project in the United States. Wayne took his knowledge, skills, and abilities and founded facility management and engineering in 1997 and has learned to become a successful entrepreneur through the School of Hard Knocks. FME provides management systems for the operation of a client's facility-related activities. FME also provides support services for both short-term and long-term facility planning and cost control. In addition, Wayne also launched Grow Company Profits to help organizations outside of the facility management space to achieve sustained profitability that funds their managed growth. Wayne shows CEOs how much money they are leaving on the table as a result of their company experiencing disengaged employees, unnecessary complexity, hidden costs, constrained growth, lack of joy. Wayne helps CEOs simply see how they leave money on the table when their strategy, culture, and operations are misaligned. Wayne still lives in Evansville, Indiana, loves to cook, is divorced, and has 1 son and 2 grandkids. Wayne Washington, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am ready to help you get over the hump. Looking forward to it.
I am too. Now, I think it's only appropriate that maybe we expand upon the conversation that you and I had started before we started recording. And that is, when I look at, a lot of the people who I've had on the show, a lot of people who are, trying to, get audience and help people to transform and change their operations, they're really a lot of times talking about the exact same things you're talking about. Hey, you have to have engaged employees. You have to be more, agile or streamlined, and you have to focus on digital transformation. You've got, all of these types of things. So really, when I look at your work, how does that differ from so many of the other people who are saying some of the same things as far as those core areas of the organization are concerned?
I think the best way to do it is I get down into the how to do it. I try to get out of the theory and bring it down to how to do it. And it's come down to what I called my aligned BuyIn system. What that means is your company has got to be in alignment. When I say your company's got to be in alignment, you, the management, the employees have all got to be on the same page, rowing in the same directions. That's not easy to do. The second thing that has to happen is those employees have to buy in. They have to want to come to work and be a part of where you're going. The next area I look at is the planning and scheduling. How do you take all the things you're doing and plan and schedule so you're doing the most important things at the right place at the right time? And the last thing I look at is doing, how do you keep score? So those 4 pillars is what I try to do. But let's circle back and look at that first part. And I think it's really important from a company standpoint. You got to know where you're going. You got to know why you exist. And I think a lot of times you have a company that has a startup and they start making money and they kind of drift away from the reason why they got in business. And when you start drifting away from that reason why you got in business, who knows what you're doing? Who knows how to follow you? So to me, it's very important that you have a clear, concise, and communicatable strategy that not only you, but every employee can buy into. Too many times I've seen organizations or companies, they have this top-down approach. I do the strategy, I'm going to tell you how to do it. And that rarely works because what seems to happen is people don't follow that because it's this new age where they want to be informed, they want to be involved. So number one, you got to get all your staff on board. And how I encourage people to do that, what's your company's compelling story? And I'm going to go back to 1994, which is a long time ago, when I was working at working at Mead Johnson. We were transitioning from, we were just transitioning where we separated the nutritional division, the pharmaceutical division, and the site division. And I had responsibility for 2 million square feet of space, everything that manufactures Infamil, everything, all the support, all the research, all that was part of my responsibilities. And back in 1994, that was the age of outsourcing. And if you couldn't get your prices cheaper, you were going to look at outsourcing. When I had the site, these are the guys who do the toilets, the plumbing, the grass, all that kind of stuff. That is easy to outsource because it's not one of your core processes. So when we had to look back and say, how do we save ourselves? The other thing I look about that time frame was my employees were the maintenance employees, were the most senior maintenance employees we had between the ages of 45 and 60 years old. And to them, retirement was on their vision. Bringing to them, talking about change was not a subject they wanted to talk about. So what we had to do, what I had to look back and doing is how do we bring everybody together? And what we did, we made the outsourcer the enemy. And as we're saying, we had to be better, fair. And this slogan came up from them. We'd be better, faster, and cheaper. So what I had to do was I had my most vocal senior craftsmen, put them together, let them, how do we solve this? And they came up with what we call our working agreements. These were agreements of how we as 54 people agreed to respect each other, agreed to be accountable to each other, and basically our rules of engagement of how we would interact with each other and respect each other. So it was matter of fact, we put them on a poster. All 54 people signed it. It was posted on the bulletin board. It's posted around the shop, and that becomes a part of accountability. It's a natural born accountability because you have accountability by your peers because you don't let your peers down. So once we have that working agreement, we decided how do we make sure we're all on the same page, and our task was to be better, faster, and cheaper than the competitors. I had just put in a couple years ago, a maintenance management system where we could start tracking our costs. Before that, we were on a paper and pencil type of system. But when you get to a maintenance management system where you can start computerizing things, again, this is back in the 90s, this is before the cloud era, you can start tracking costs. So when we start looking at costs, we looked at where our costs were in supplies and services and overtime. And going back and looking at those areas, the people, not me, my people came to me with suggestions that we could cut costs here, 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 and here. And by doing that, we saved our jobs. Over the next 3 years, we reduced our operating costs roughly about 7% a year for the next 3 years. And I'm talking about an $18 million budget that these guys, they came to me with the ideas of how to do that. So number one, getting all those employees on board into a fixed system, a system they all buy into, that to me, that's why I look at how do you align your organization to get everybody on the same page, going in the same direction for a common cause. So that was number one.
So before you go further on
Sure.
that, I mean, because I think it's important because we hear a lot of these different words thrown at us today.
Okay.
And so I think a lot of us have talked and heard about BuyIn. Well, now we're hearing inclusion, right? So what is, from your perspective, what is the difference between BuyIn and inclusion?
To me, inclusion, it's like an invitation. In other words, you can come to the party, or you could come to work here, or I'm going to share some information with you. Buy-in to me is a commitment. You're basically saying, I buy into this, I agree to this. And when everybody signed on the working agreements I talked about, that was a commitment. They said, I commit to do this. And it's the same, to me, it's the same thing as a buy-in. We could have put, like a lot of companies just put slogans on the walls or values on the walls. People look at that. To me, they look at it, they may have an input, that's inclusion. I look at buy-in when you put your name, your soul, your body on the line.
Okay. So then if it's fair to say or fair to ascertain,
sure,
what we're saying is that inclusion needs to happen first. And then once we've established the inclusion, we need to take it a step further and get to the point of commitment or buy-in.
Well, I'm gonna add another stage in there. Not only is it inclusion, but it's also got to be collaboration. So, and I look at collaboration and inclusion really working together. When you collaborate and include, you're bringing all levels of the organization together to talk. You're getting those input and ideas, and you have like a co-created strategy. It's not just a top-down strategy. We all look at the strategy we're doing. We all understand why we're doing it, and we can concisely say what that is very quickly, down to the janitor of the company.
That's very helpful because, like I said, when we get so many of these mixed messages and different words and different wording and different perspectives, a lot of times we can't see, where does all this fit, right? I mean, ultimately, it goes all into the pillars that you're talking about, right?
Yes.
But essentially, the ingredients in order to construct those pillars is, can be mixed in their message. They can be, undermined from one to the other. They can be sabotaged. There's just all these different variables that start, coming into play. When we start talking about, gender differences, when we start talking about departmental differences, when we start talking about, in-source and outsourcing, I mean, it gets massively complex really darn fast, because ultimately when it all said and done, we've got to serve a customer. Otherwise we're out of business.
Right. And I understand what you're saying. And when I look at what was a key thing that made us work, the values. We lived our values. And a lot of times when you hear people or companies talk about values, they are just slogans. They're nice sounding words, but what's it take to be a high performing team? And how do you have a high performing culture? So when you look at what it takes to develop a high performing culture, you predict things ahead of time. You plan for things. You perform well. You measure well. And if you look at those are some of the things as the values that you say, these are our common values, we all live to do like this. And you have peers holding you accountable to achieve those values. So the inclusion and the collaboration, they kind of go together. And that's where I feel it's important as a step, as you say, before buy-in. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I mean, and even for me, when you start talking about for instance, collaboration, right? Co-collaboration, collaboration. Mm-hmm. When you start talking about, and this is another thing too, that I kind of makes the hair stand up on my neck, which used to be on my head, is, accountability, holding accountable. I am of the firm belief that really the only person who I should hold accountable is myself. Mm-hmm. And then everybody has that responsibility. And therefore I need to take ownership of that. And so as a leader, what I want to do is create an environment where people, are taking ownership and then therefore are self-accountable. Because if not, what we've done in our society is made accountability, something that, now puts your poster on the wall as most wanted. Mm-hmm. It vilifies you. It just doesn't have, a very good context in any way, shape, or form. When you start talking about it, it has problems.
When you talked about when you started reading about the bio, there's a term that I focus a lot in a lot of companies, that's disengaged employees. Mm-hmm. And when you have a disengaged employee, you don't have employees that are all going to buy in. You have people who have checked out from work, right? So where do disengaged employees usually come from? You have your most interaction with your boss and your leadership team.
Sure.
If your boss and leadership team are narcissistic, or aggressive, or disorganized, or patronizing, they're the kind of things that turn employees off. So how do we make sure we're eliminating disengaged employees by making sure our management team walks the walk and talks the talk? If you want to have a high performance culture, you got to establish what the values for a high performance culture. Your leadership team has to live those values for high performance culture. You can't have two people on the C level squabbling in public or not speaking. That's the bad example to set. So if you live your values from that executive team down to I'm not trying to say a janitor is a lowly level, but a janitor is more like an entry level into an organization. If that janitor can have the same values as a CEO and a leadership team, you're gonna set the environment where you're setting a model where the employees have something to live for, have something to look up to, as opposed to something to avoid. So when I think of values, when I think of buy-in, I think of ownership, it all starts with that leadership team. They have to walk the talk.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I had Dr. Jim Harder on the show, and he talks about who is the chief scientist with the Gallup organization. And he talks about 80 years worth of research at Gallup in regards to, workplace engagement. And he said, every single study, time and time again, 80% of the reason why people are disengaged is because of the relationship they have with their immediate supervisor. It's The Manager was the name of his book, right? And we know that, right?
Right.
And also, I always say that when you start talking about disengaged employees, I say I highly doubt that you actually hired them that way.
No, yeah. Well, when you go through the interview process, most people have their best behavior, and that's the best you're ever going to see them. And it kind of either stabilizes or goes downhill from there. But I think the way to help your audience understand where I'm coming from is when I think of the term I'll use the term operationally excellent. In other words, we execute efficiently and effectively every day. We get things done to move towards our sustained goals. So in order to execute effectively every day, you have to operate exceptionally well. So there are certain behaviors and traits that we've identified that an operationally excellent company does. And we look at those areas from a standpoint, from a cost standpoint. What I'll call them profit stealers. Do you have things like when I use the term hidden cost? Do you have things like bottlenecks in your processes? Do you have a hidden cost? Unintegrated applications. Those are time wasters. Those are delay wasters. Those are things that help raise your costs. Do you have to stand around and wait for decisions? If there are things that add costs. So when I talk about most of your upper echelon, as far as operation excellent company, they eliminated those things. It took them a while to get there, but they eliminated those things. So what we try to do is look at where you stand right now and compare you to an operationally excellent company and identify what that gap is. Once you know what a gap is, then you can start taking steps to close gaps, but you have to know where you start from. It's almost like having that baseline first is what we try to do. So when we look at how do we make practical what we're saying, we know what it takes to be an operator. I've been around operations for almost 30 years now. So I know what it takes for a company to operate exceptionally well. When you know that and you kind of help a person understand or assess where they are right now, then you can take some steps, step by step. How do we change that? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, I've spent, a big hunk of my life in operations, and I still, I'm in that role helping other people to be able to improve their operations, just in a different environment. So a lot of the Fast Leader Show folks, are in the customer service and the contact center area. I mean, when you start talking about operations, that's a pretty significant operation for a lot of organizations these days, right?
It is.
Some of them are outsourced, right? So there's a
lot of them are outsourced, it seems like.
Depending on the sector and the segment, there can be a large percentage. But these same dynamics play out and play true in all types of different organizational environments. When you start talking about adding people to be able to, get work done, and the interesting thing, I always used to say this joke about talking about janitors, and because we've used that example because of your story. is I said, if you think that the customer doesn't get impacted by the job that your janitor does, I said, I want you to think about this. So I have my people on the phone who are taking care of customer problems, all day long, and they need to go use the facilities. And if they walk in there and that thing is nasty, and there's trash all over the place, do you think that they don't take that frustration out on the phone and then therefore the customer feels it?
Yeah,
of course they do.
Of course, Jim, it all ties together, and that's what I feel some people or some companies fail to see. A lot of companies look at sales and marketing. That's that customer focus. That's that customer forward position. But everyone in the company contributes to that. Kind of some example. We've had part of our business was we've done some janitorial work. We've done cleaning of facilities for a number of years, and we would have clients who would set traps for us. Leave a penny in the corner of the room, or do something where they've counted the number of pieces of candy on their desk, just to see how well what we're doing. But how you got to make sure that whoever's the janitor, whoever's the electrician, whoever's the carpenter, they have to have the same kind of gusto of going forward and realize their job helps you in customer service, because if you do your job better, we as a company do our job better. And if the toilets are nasty, if the lights are broken, if that window's out, if it's unsafe to walk down the steps, all those kind of things, that affects employees. So how do we as an employee team all come together from the leadership team down to the bottom?
Yeah, and I think that's the point. It's, all across the organization, regardless of vertical, right? And the customer feels it every single step, and all along the way.
Well, that's that first pillar. It's how do we get our company, the structure aligned, and then the employees to collaboratively and include buy into that structure. It goes by I think I was talking about the NASCAR analogy. When you look at NASCAR, you have a car that's built for a specific situation where it goes in a circle. That's all the way that car is designed, and that's the only use for it. So you optimize the construction and structure of that car. Then you have your driver and the pit crew team. Now, that driver and pit crew team has to function as one each and every race if they want to be successful. Now you take the driver pit crew team and you take that car and you got to marry them together and fine tune them to make sure they'll work. So your company is almost like that NASCAR vehicle itself. How's that structured? Do you have the systems, processes, procedures in place that are easy to understand, easy to access? Then you look at your team, your pit crew team. Does everyone, can we collaborate? We have the ability to get information back and forth. Do I have to wait for you to make decisions? Do I need to get approval for everything? Do we all know what we're doing so we can function what we need to do when we need to do it? So when everybody's working as one on the team, and your structure, your vehicle is fine-tuned, you bring them together, that's where the synergy comes. So once you have that in place, to me, the next step is, how do we plan and schedule our work? How do we make sure we're using our resources effectively each and every day so you have the right resource at the right place at the right time for the right reason? And when you get that in place, you do that week after week after week, you're going to hit your goals. You're going to sustain your goals.
Okay. So one of the things that for me, as you're talking, I start thinking about, which is of vital importance for a lot of organizations. And you kind of hit on this a little bit when you talked about the decreases in operational expenses for your organization. And so that's one way to have an impact. And the other side is, from a growth avenue, right? But ultimately, we have to have the ability to creatively think. And if, or I should say, one of the potential negative side effects of being so operationally precise is that's what we focus in on, is being operationally, precise. And then therefore we're not investing, or we're not taking the opportunity to creatively think, and then therefore be more innovative, because we're too busy looking at metrics, processes, and procedures, and all of those types of things. So how do you prevent, because we've seen it happen, that I get so good at operation, my operation from a function perspective, that everybody else is passing me by from an innovation perspective?
Okay. I think the best way to try to help us talk about this is visualize a Venn diagram with 3 circles. In one circle, you have operations. In one circle, you have culture. And the third circle, you have strategy. And when I talk about how your operations, culture, and strategy are aligned, I'm looking particularly at that Venn diagram. Unless you're operating in the center, which I'll call the sweet spot, you're gonna have disengaged employees. You're gonna have hidden costs. You're gonna have unnecessary complexity because you skew to one side or the other. So operate in the sweet spot is the goal. We have a tool called a execution alignment analyzer. And what that does is you look at that Venn diagram, it tells you how you align differently in that Venn diagram. So if you're a strategy heavy, you're going to be do it my way kind of a guy, because it's going to be a top down kind of approach. If we made the strategy, you do it. If you're going to be more of a culture heavy kind of guy, it's going to be like, oh, can we all get along? Let's not have any HR type of issues and things like that. And if you're going to be more of an operations kind of person, you are going to be by the books, hit the numbers, cut the costs. All right. All three of them run a company a different way. So if whichever way you dominate is the way you're going to run your company, we try to help people understand how they stand right now. It's like find that starting point. And once you find that starting point, if you want to hit the sweet spot, where you have to change to get more into the sweet spot. So I hear what you're saying. People can get out of kilter or off kilter or out of alignment. And that's what I call it, out of alignment. But know where you stand and then take steps to get back into that sweet spot. If that makes sense where I'm coming from? It
does. And those visuals help. And it also, like I had mentioned, enables that differentiation, because otherwise, some of these things from these pillars perspective and just talking, about them being that way, it's like, oh, yeah, everybody says that. But as you're, talking, through this with you and then getting a greater understanding, it makes things come to life, and, really enables us to see how, we can therefore move from, the pillar and what we're talking about and where we need to be to actually getting there. So
yes,
for doing that.
And I think that's the thing. I try not to talk theory. I think everything I've talked about, or I try to talk about, is things I've lived or things I've worked through at some point in my career. The hallmark is when I go back to when I took those 55, 60-year-old guys who didn't want to talk about change and got them to change. I got those guys, they got themselves to bring ideas forward. And how do we cut costs? You'd be surprised the number of ideas. These 50-year-old guys said, hey, I was thinking last night, can we try X, Y, and Z? So what they bought in, they committed. Their jobs were on the line because we made the outsourcing the enemy, if that makes sense.
It does. All those stories, we can learn from, and definitely those, and you made them, very real. So thanks for doing that. Now, so when you start talking about going through any type of transformation, even when you start talking about those 50, 60-year-old guys that were facing retirement and it was just saying, oh, I don't care, I'm gone soon anyway, right? Is we need inspiration. We need to focus in on something that helps us to stay the course, and hopefully to engage ourselves in moving forward. One of the things that we do on the show in order to help us do that is really look at quotes. Is there a favorite quote or two that you can share?
Well, I would have to say the quote I've lived by, being an engineer, that is, I lived by most of my life. From a business standpoint, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I enjoy that quote because so many times we just go in and operate and do things and have no idea where we stand. So if I could put a number on what I'm doing, I can manage it. If I could tell, but even behaviors, you could put measures on behaviors. Are you agreeable? Are you not? Are you cordial? Are you not? And put enough behavioral type measurements together, you could tell whether a person fits or not. So to me, if you could measure things, you could manage things, applies to all aspects of your business, not just the finance side, but the strategy side. If we're going for a strategy X, Y, and Z, if we do option A, is it taking us closer to our strategy or further from our strategy? If we do option B, is it taking us closer to our strategy or further from our strategy? So I look at that quote and how do I take the things I'm doing into operations, the culture, and the strategy? I have an anchor, so to speak, as to know whether I'm moving forward or not. Am I getting closer to that sweet spot or not? So I try to measure what's important and to make sure we get the right things done at the right time. As a matter of fact, when I look at how do you take everything we do from an operation standpoint, what's that one measure that matters? And to me, it comes down to one measure that matters. If I'm trying, I think I was trying to tell you before, we try to schedule our resources using a 3-week rolling schedule. So we look at what do we need 2 weeks from now? What do we need next week? And what are we using this week? So if I know what I'm looking at, what I need to use from a business standpoint, resource-wise, manpower, money, materials, and management, when I'm talking about management skills and abilities, what do I need 3 weeks from now? I can look and see, do I have that? Is it there? Is Bill on vacation? Do I have I over capacity? I'm over capacity. Do I need to get additional skills? So when you start doing that and you start bringing that to a planning schedule and an operating schedule, that operating schedule to me is gold. In other words, if I hit 90% of completing that operating schedule, I know that's the one measure I try to make sure we meet every week rather. Everybody in the company sees that operating schedule. All their schedules are tied to that operating schedule. They know what they have to do. They know who they're getting information from. So when we hit that operating schedule, we know we're successful. You do that week after week after week after week, you will grow, sustain profitability, and you'll hit your goals. So I look at really how we make sure we meet that schedule. And we do that by making sure we have the resources available before it hits the operating schedule. I'm hoping that makes sense.
It does. I mean, you're making a lot of sense. And this dialogue has been very valuable to me, and hopefully, and I'm sure it is, to all of our listeners and watchers. But I can tell you, when you start looking at being able to get to the point to where you are today, there was a lot of experiences that went into it, and they weren't all perfect.
No,
definitely not. We talk about getting over the hump on the show. So is there a time where you got over the hump that you could share?
I'm trying to think of it's different situations. Obviously there are personal humps you got to get over. Mm-hmm. There are business humps you got to get over. And I would think the business hump I had to get over when I left Mead Johnson, and it wasn't my decision to leave and started my own business. You talk about scared. You talk about putting your own money on the line and making it work. I had a partner, and we started the time, and within 2 weeks, we got our first contract. And within the first month, we were able to start paying ourselves each month from every month there forward. So that was a hump we had to get over. And really, my partner had contacts he was able to bring to the firm. I was a more of the behind the scenes kind of guy. He was more of that outgoing kind of guy. And I think we meshed well together from an organizational standpoint. But that was a major hump. The second major hump, and this is just recent. Last October, about a year ago now, I lost my major contract that was about 70% of our income. I made the mistake of getting my income that far out of kilter. And you talk about puckering. I mean, that was hard to deal with. Luckily, it was COVID related. That's the main reason why it happened. It was COVID related. Luckily, we were able to apply for some PPP funding that helped us get on our feet and go from there. But those situations, you got to stop back and reevaluate. Do I just sit and exist, or do I step up and move forward and excel? And you gotta make that decision and stop whining and move on. Does that make sense?
Living it. What are you talking about?
I ask that question a lot because I want to make sure I'm clear when I talk. So
I said, I'm living it, man. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Okay. Well, then, okay. No, let's look at the realities, right?
Okay.
You went through that. You're been in business for a long time.
Yeah.
You're getting to a point, and you think about, your age and where I am now and what I want to do. What's a goal? What's one of the goals for Wayne?
I would have to say, Jim, I feel I've been blessed with the amount of knowledge and the circumstances and experiences I've accumulated all of my life, all of my career, whether it be a business situation, whether it be a personal situation. What I do I take that to my grave and not share that with anyone else? There was a movie I watched years ago, a movie called Pay It Forward. And that's my philosophy. How can I take what I have and pay it forward? So what I've been trying to do over the last, I think since 2016, how do I take because being an engineer, how do I systematize what I do and put it down on paper or computer or systems and files that I can help transfer other people to do? So, over the years, we've developed a lot of templates. Over the years, we've developed a lot of systems. Over the years, we developed a lot of tools. So how do I take all that information? Look, I'll even go back. The book, there are two books that from my career standpoint that have been the most helpful for me. One is the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and the second one is Blue Ocean Strategy. And I can't remember the names of the people who wrote that. But the concept of the E-Myth Revisited is you look at your business as a system, and you create those systems, and you teach people how to run your systems. I did that from a facility standpoint, and that's what I try to do when I'm working with CEOs now. Look at your business as a system and have a system that people run the system. So you can get people with the right talent, with the right behavior, with the right values, plug them into your system. They'll help buy into where you're trying to go. So that's one of the things I try to do. So paying it forward, giving back to those, I can't even remember the number of people I'll call mentors, but I have a lot of people who helped me. And right now, my son lives 2 hours away in Terre Haute, and my grandkids are there also. So it's not someone I see on an ongoing basis. So I got this big house I live in by myself. I spend a lot of time, I love to cook, but I spend a lot of time taking the things out of my mind and get them on paper, get them on a system, get them on a computer. So paying it forward, I think, is the best answer I can have for you right now.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Wayne, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Okay. Wayne, Washington, are you ready to hoe down?
I am ready to hoe down.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I have to say a lot of time it's myself. By that, again, being an engineer, sometimes I will overanalyze. Sometimes I will overthink. An opportunity can come up, and I know what to do. I know what I should be doing. I know it's the right thing to do, but that internal fear creeps in. So I have to say, I eventually end up doing it. I eventually end up acting, but at times I hold myself back.
What is the greatest leadership advice you have ever received?
Number one, be true to yourself. I don't want to be phony to anyone. I don't want to be phony to anyone. So be true to yourself, number one, and respect other people, number two. So if you're true to yourself, respect other people, that's been really a foundational hallmark of how I feel I've been successful over the years.
And what is one tool that you believe helps you in business or life?
A tool that helps me in business or life. Well, the tool itself is I guess I've been involved with computers for a number of years, and the computer from a standpoint of research. It is not a question I want to learn. I can now go to the internet, find some relevant information, and use it to help me process things. So the computer for access and research, no matter where you are in the country, you can do that. So that's been a huge tool for me.
Well, and I also asked about one book you'd recommend to our Legion. You actually mentioned two. You talked about the E-Myth Revisited, and you talked about the Blue Ocean Strategy. But yes. I'll tell you what, I'll give you an opportunity to throw a third one in there. Is there another book you'd recommend?
Yes. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And because once you know your why, it's easy to put together the how and the what.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net and then doing search for Wayne Washington. Okay, Wayne, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
What skill or piece of knowledge? I would have to say it's people skills, and to develop relationships and develop better relationships. That's a skill that served in my life, and that's a skill that served me earlier in my life. That's a skill that serves me now. If I had to go back, I would start with there, because I feel I can always learn a technical skill. I can always learn a new job, but people skills, and once you got them and you can do it comfortably and you do it well, it serves you for your entire life. So that's the skill I would go back and I would love to have the knowledge I have right now and use the people skills I have right now and go back when I was 25. That'd be great. It'd be, who knows where I'd be right now, but I would love to do that.
Wayne, I had a fun time talking with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Sure. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, but I have my own company, Grow Company Profits, a website, growcompanyprofits.com. You can email me at wayne@growcompanyprofits.com. And just for I think if you want to put in the show notes, I have access to my that analyzer I talk about, whether your strategy, culture, and operations. It's a link called Analyzer Alignment. alignmentanalyzer.com. It's an interactive series where I take you through a series of questions to find out where you are, how your strategy, company, culture, and operations are aligned. So if your users or listeners want to look at that, they feel free.
Wayne Washington, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and helping us all get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.